Now I want to go ahead and look at arrays. So for example, I can say let names, and then I can say this is an array. So I can put open and close bracket, and then I can just define it like this and then add things to it later, or I can initialize it as an empty array just like that. So now it's an empty array. I can go down here and I can say names, and then I can push something over to the array. I can do push, and then let's say I'm gonna push a name on there, then I'm gonna say junior. Now you can see that this is giving me an error because by default TypeScript assigned the type never to it, so we have to give this a type. So here we can say this is gonna be a string array, and you can see that at this point it's not complaining anymore because we're pushing a string onto it. So if I were to push a number, it's going to give me an error because I say it's going to be a string array. So let's revert that. So this is how you define array. So you define the opening and closing a bracket, and then you put the actual type of the array in front of the bracket. Another way you can do this is if I remove all this, you can use the word array and then you pass in the type. So I can say this is an array of string, and then I close it like this. So that is equivalent to what we had earlier, and you can see that it's working just fine. So I can go down, I can put another name on that. So I can go down here and then say Alex, for example, and that would work just fine because that's just another way to define array. You can either use the brackets or you can just use the word array, and then with the diamond you put the type inside of there. And if I go down here and try to console log this, so we're gonna do console log, and we're gonna console log names. Go ahead and run this. We have our array of string, and I can remove this as well. Show you the other example. I can put open and close bracket, and you can see that if I run it, it's gonna work the same way. So you can either do this or use the array keyword, but you usually see this, at least from my experience, I've usually seen this format. And if you want, you can also initialize it. So I can go in there, I can say, you know, junior, and then put another name in here, Nelson. So that would work just fine as well. If I comment these two out and run this, and you can see we have junior and Nelson. So it works the same way. You can, you know, initialize it with some value, or you can just declare it just like that as an empty array, just like that. Or you don't even have to do that at all. You can just declare it just like that without assigning anything to it initially. But it's a good idea to initialize it as an empty array because then you can use the push. So for example, if I uncomment these two lines and then I remove the initialization as an empty array, you're gonna see that it's gonna give me an error because it's not initialized at all. You can see the error right here. So it's a good idea to initialize it as an empty array, and then you can push values to it later so that you don't get an error when you try to do that. And you can do the same thing with all the different types. So if I go down here and I say let, and let's say numbers, and then I'm gonna give this a type of number array. So I'm gonna do number, open and close bracket, and then I'm gonna initialize it as an empty array. And then I can go down here, I can say numbers dot push, and then I can pass in a number in here, and I can do another one. Let's say I'm passing in 8 this time, and then I can console log it. So I'm gonna copy this line, go down here, paste, and I want to console log numbers, and then run. You can see we have our numbers here. So the same rule applies. If I try to pass in a string in here, of course it's gonna give me an error. And you can do the same for a Boolean array. So I'm gonna scroll down a little bit, make sure I change this back. And I can go down, I can say let, and let's say Boolean array, and give it a type of Boolean, and that's an array, and then initialize it as an empty array. And I can go down here, I can say Boolean array that push, and then I can pass in true in here. So it's going to be the same for all the different types that we've seen so far. So string, numbers, or Boolean. So it's going to be the same. So that means that for this array, I can only pass true or false. I can't pass anything else to it because I defined the type to be a Boolean as an array. And like I said, I usually use this format. So I don't use the this format. So when you use the keyword array, and then you put the opening and closing greater than or lesser than sign, just like that. I don't usually define it like this. I usually use the this format. So I put the type, and then I put opening and closing bracket. But this works fine. As far as I know, there's no performance issue. There's really no difference. It'll work just fine. You can see if I run this again, we get the same result. So it's going to come down to your preference as to which one you like better.